This is a video for the left hand and synchronization exercises from my Volume 2 method book. And you can get there's a link for the book in the YouTube info section. So I'm going to go through all the left hand exercises. We already did the right hand exercises, and this is in the final portion of the book. Now, you should integrate this part of the book at any time, like whenever you start the book, but you don't have to do all of the exercises in this section right away. You should just start with the first one, and then you can slowly add more as you go. I've designed it so it's kind of progressive, and that the most important ones are the first ones, and that the later ones will just give you more and more skills. So don't feel the need to go through all the exercises. There's too much for doing it every day maybe. But integrate it slowly and just get comfortable with each one. And then as you do it, you'll probably memorize them, and you can just practice them when you pick up your guitar and just go right into them. So the first exercise is just 1, 2, 3, 4 on all strings. This was also in my Volume 1 method book, but it's here again. Keep in mind that just because you can play it and that you don't find it hard doesn't mean that you should stop practicing it. I've been to so many masterclasses where professionals will get high-level players, like players playing like some of the hardest material, and they will stop those students and just tell them to just play this exercise, because it doesn't mean the same thing to that advanced student that it does to the beginner student. If you teach a beginner student how to do this, they might just be trying their best to just play close to the fret and play accurately, not make it buzz and stuff. If you give this exercise to an advanced player, they might be trying to like make sure that everything is ultra precise, that they're not using very much tension, so their left hand is nice and relaxed the whole time. So it means a totally different thing. I practice this exercise every day because it's a good reminder for my fingers of how to play. It's an excellent idea to just play through something nice and simple like this at that speed, nice and slow, making sure that your fingers are close to the frets, that each knuckle is curved, that you're not pushing too hard, so you're working on relaxation, that you're playing right on the fingertip, not on the pad of your finger, but right on the fingertip actually. There's so many things that an advanced player can work on when playing this exercise. And you know, you can get faster at it, but and that's fine. However, let me finish. However, this is not a speed exercise, so you're supposed to be working on accuracy. So make sure that you're going nice and slow and that you're doing everything perfectly. The more that you play perfectly with great technique, the more likely it is that your hands will do that when you play your pieces. So it's very important that you go very slow and you play very precisely. Okay, and then the next exercise is just 1 and 4. That's just good practice because 1 and 4 really set up the hand position. When you do 1, 3, it's very easy to like go like this and your hand position can be all off. But with the 4th finger, because of the stretch, you'll really encourage you to bring this knuckle around, have the knuckles parallel with the strings, and then you can just hover those fingers over the frets, and when they have to play, the fingers just kind of do this little button pushing motion of just down into the string, right? Without a ton of movement in the hand, so it's not like, there's not a stretch every time you do your 4th finger. Instead, and I have very small hands, and this is a full-size guitar, but instead, you just relax your hand, fan it out, and just do that little button pushing. Finger independence exercises. So in this exercise, we're going to be putting some of our fingers down on the strings of the guitar, and you can see this in tons of books. It's in like every technique book. So you put some fixed fingers down, and then you're going to be moving other fingers around. So when you look at the notation, you're going to see some notes that have X's on them. Those are the fingers that you're just placing on the string, and don't push too hard or anything like that, but place on the string properly like that. So the first example puts 2, 3, and 4 down. So you place them there, and then you're just going to engage the one finger that's needed. Then the next example, you're going to place 1, 3, 4 down, and the second finger will be engaged. If you get some auxiliary sound. The idea here is that we're holding our hand in a good position, we're engaging all the fingers, and then giving one finger the opportunity to move. Some students will find that when they try to move one of their fingers, their other finger will try to also move. They're just not used to having to control just one finger. So that's a very good exercise for that. The next example, you put 1, 2, 4 down, we're going to engage 3. Lots of students, when they're doing this one, they accidentally move one of these fingers when they try to do the individual movement. And the final one is you place 1, 2, 3 down, and you're going to engage 4. In some ways, this is a very easy exercise, but in other ways, it's just insanely important because it's really giving each finger the opportunity to try out these things, and some students might find it to be a bit of a stretch as well, so there's so many things that you can learn about it. Just make sure that your fixed fingers remain firmly on those correct frets, that you're not pushing too hard with them, and that you're nice and relaxed and you can just move those fingers around. You can practice doing it without playing too, just like engaging that one finger. Slurs. So we've already talked about in a previous video and in tons of videos on my website, This is Classical Guitar. There's so many videos on how to do slurs. These are some basic just ascending and descending slurs, and it's a great idea to start practicing these. There's a couple of techniques in guitar that you always have to practice: arpeggios, scales, slurs. Those three things are kind of the meat and potatoes of classical guitar playing, and it's going to occur in pretty much every piece. One of those three things, right? So it's important to practice them. The only thing I'll say about slurs is that don't use strength. It's not about strength at all. It's much more about a kind of a snappy left hand. So when you play the first note, don't push hard with this finger, but just snap it into place, and it'll be nice and clear. So the first exercise is just using 1, 2. And then 2, 3. And then 3, 4. Etc., etc. So you just go through different combinations up and down the strings. You can look at the page just to kind of like to make sure you follow all the combinations, but you don't have to read the music, right? You just see what fingers are being used and then go up and down the guitar with that combination. Some students will find certain ones more difficult. So if you find like 2, 4 to be more difficult, put extra practice into those ones. So practice these until they all feel just as good. Most people feel very comfortable with 1, 2, but then they start feeling uncomfortable with other ones. Also make sure that your fingers are hovering over the correct frets at all times. Of course, there's tab included here just to make sure that you're playing on the right frets, but you can move this anywhere. If you want to practice the 3rd fret, you can do that. If you want to practice the 7th fret, that's fine too. It's just a pattern that you can use. Descending slurs, all I'll say is there's 2 different ways to kind of practice these. One is to just pull the finger away. You can see my finger just came out. The other way, because sometimes we can't get enough clarity out of the 2nd note, the other way is to kind of pluck the string with the left hand and do a left hand rest stroke, so to speak. See how it plucked the string down like that? You can really get a lot of like extra ping out of that 2nd note. So if your slurs sometimes don't sound very even, or like the 2nd note sounds too weak, you can get much more clarity by doing that little downward stroke. But it's not always beneficial to hit the string below, because what if it's supposed to be ringing out? So you should also practice pulling the finger away from the string and not hitting the string below. And same thing here, you're just going through combinations. And you go through all the different combinations listed on the page. There's only one other thing I'll mention about slurs, is that students often do this with both ascending or descending slurs. They go, because they want to do a fast movement with the slur fingers, they're not actually playing with an even rhythm. Make sure that your rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and is nice and even across the whole exercise. So if you want to put a metronome on for that, I think that would be useful. Same thing with the descending slurs. Some students might sometimes go like this. But 1 and 2 and 3 and you have to keep it nice and even. So that sometimes means extending the first note, letting it ring for its appropriate value. So just keep an eye on that. Last 2 things is 2 movable major scale patterns. We'll go over more scales in the Volume 3 method book and in different scale books. But for now, there's just 2 patterns. One is in the 4th position, and you have the notes in the tab and the fingering, so. So that's how you play it, but just remember you can move that anywhere. That's an A major scale because we started on A. If I move that up to B and do the same finger pattern, that's a B scale. If I move it down to G, G scale. So you can just move that scale anywhere you want on the guitar and it'll be whatever major scale the starting note is, the tonic is. The other one has a shift in it. Yeah. So that shift, keep your first finger down. You might want to practice it without the shift, kind of like just in block forms, and then stop. So those are the 2 sections, and then practice the shift. On the way down, keep your first finger down as well. Keeping your first finger down just allows you to feel the string and move your hand up without getting disoriented. If you take your finger off the string, who knows where it's going to come down. Keep it on the string and you can use the string as a guide to where you're going. Keeps everything a little bit tighter and a little bit more secure. The final thing is just 2 chromatic scales. A chromatic scale just uses all the notes in a position and all the notes in the musical alphabet, right? good exercise just because it engages all the fingers, right? And the following exercise is the same thing, except it goes up to the highest octave. So I'll just do the ascending. So as you can see, I had a little slip up there on the way down. So this scale also involves a number of big shifts, which is a great practice. It's a great thing to practice for you. On the way up, you have your 4-finger group, and then you just shift up to the next one. When you're ascending, keep that first finger down, so it offers all that security. On the way down, you could keep your first finger down. I kind of lift it off, but it's tough to move from the first finger to your 4th finger. So you have to just make sure you practice really slowly at first, that you keep your hand very aligned, so that your finger doesn't go off track or something like that. The variation that I kind of add at the end is just adding the upper note before each chromatic note. So if it goes E, F, F sharp, G, like that, then we just add F, E, F, G flat, F, G flat, G, F sharp, G, A flat, G, A flat. It's complicated when you say it, but when you kind of get the pattern going, it's really straightforward. If we start with an open string, then if the open E is the first note, then we just add the first finger first. And then when we play this note, we're going to add the upper note. So it's written, the first little bit is written out there, and you just continue that pattern. You can come up with any patterns. You don't have to practice that one. You can come up with any kind of repeated fingering pattern that you like. The most important thing is that you just know that chromatic scale first. And then there's a billion exercises for the left hand. Like, books are full of them. You don't have to worry about it right now. You just want a little bit of technique to get you going and to teach yourself good hand positions. And then in volume 3 of my book and the technique book that I'm designing, we're going to really dive into a lot of exercises, so you can wait for that.